Welcome back to the Move podcast. We're going to cover the Tour Down Under after 3 years without it. I'm JB Hager, but more importantly, we're joined by Johan Bruneel and Spencer Martin. Spencer, you may know from our Outcomes betting show, which you can get as a season pass holder. And also, you caught Spencer on our Trades and Transfer show. And also, maybe you've heard Beyond the Peloton podcast and or newsletter. So this is a first for us. Since doing the move since 2017, we were expanding and you guys wanted more race coverage. So here we are talking about Tour Down Under. We may have done it in the last few years, but then again, because of COVID and, the really strict lockdown in the country of Australia, we weren't able to do this. So this is the first time for me to even watch that race. So kicking off the move and everything we do a lot earlier this year. So let's jump right into it. This was a cool race. And I will start by how they opened with a crit. I've never seen anybody do that, but let's jump right into that. Is that very common for any race to open with a crit? Great for the fans.
Well, JB, the crit, we've been there a few times. Lance raced it 2 years in a row, I think, 2009 and 2010. And so the crit is basically, it's not part of the Tour Down Under, but it's like, all the riders are racing it. It's basically for the spectators. It's very short. And it kind of sets the tone. The Tour Down Under is a very special race because it's, it's around Adelaide. All the teams are in one same place in the same hotel. There's like a little village in front of the hotel that, with tents where teams have their mechanics and people can go around. So it's a happening. It's like a bike festival, right? Where every day these guys come back to the same place. And so that criterium is part of it. It doesn't count for the GC of the Tour Down Under, but it's like a showcase of what's going to happen. And, this, unsurprisingly was won by Caleb Ewan. I think it's great for him to his first race, his first sprint of the season to win it. He was racing without his Lotto Destiny team because Lotto Destiny got relegated to the second division. So they are invited to all the World Tour races, but they are not obligated to race them. And so they declined. And so Caleb Ewan was part of the national Australian team and a great sprint of him. I think it's great for his confidence and also for his team, this guy is ready and can win sprints.
Is that, I'd never seen that before where someone races for a national team. Like how did that work? And obviously in being in Australia, they want Caleb Ewan to race, but is that scenario come up?
It does happen. It does happen. I've seen it a few times happen in Italy, where certain riders, and especially in when they're preparing the World Championships, there's some races before the World Championships, and when some of the teams that are not going and they have riders on that team that are about to make the national team, they put together a national team for those events. And I think it was in the interest of Australian cycling, in the interest of course, of Tour Down Under to have Caleb Ewan at the start. I mean, he's one of the Australian stars, so it all made sense.
Okay.
I mean, can you imagine being his teammate on that basically like a local development team, and then you have Caleb Ewan as your teammate? That'd be something you probably wouldn't forget for the rest of your life, and pretty motivating in the race.
Yeah. I think for them, for that team, I think there was one other teammate of him. I forgot the name now. That was probably another teammate of him, or at least another like World Tour rider on that team. But yeah, I mean, for those young guys, the development guys, I think it's great for them to race with a sprinter like that, because not just in the crit, but during the Tour Down Under, there's at least 2 or 3 stages that are likely to finish in a sprint. So they get really a taste of what it is to work for a leader who's a sprinter, to keep him in position. Lead out could be difficult because, of course, it's super fast. But it's like you said, Spencer, for those young guys to race along one of the best sprinters in the world, must be an amazing experience in your own country.
And
do those
JB,
guys go ahead?
Oh, sorry. You live in the heart of American crit country down there in Austin. And just to give people like a little bit of perspective about how much higher level this crit was than like a top American crit, if you go race Tulsa Tough Pro Edition, you're going to be going 29 miles an hour, maybe. These guys covered 33 miles in an hour during that crit. So this was a very, very high level crit, like unbelievably fast.
Do those guys enjoy doing crits? I mean, or is it an obligation?
It's an obligation. It's a warm up. It's not dangerous. It's a really nice circuit. So, nobody really, it's your last intensity training before the Tour Down Under starts. So, and it's not very long. So, I mean, they don't mind, once they're there, they may as well race,
I know after the tour, a lot of those big names go and do them, and it's a nice payday, and it's great for the fans to see the stars of the tour. Yeah. But that's a bit more ceremonial, right?
Yeah. This is a different kind of crit. This is not like a post-tour crit. This is real racing, and they go. I remember they go really, really fast there, super fast.
And before we get into officially jumping into the Tour Down Under, we're going to just take a quick moment here and let Lance share with you some messages from a couple of our partners.
Today's show brought to you by Zwift. Y'all been checking my Strava? Because I've been on Zwift a lot for me. G?
I haven't.
Cool. Thank you.
I haven't been checking your Strava.
Thank you so much.
But I did. I have seen our numbers increasing every week on the Zwift Wedu Wednesday rides. And it's been a lot of fun.
And I've been traveling a little bit, so I've missed the last few Wednesdays. But other than that, man, I'm a Zwifting mofo. I'm on the bike. And George has been sick, so I'm taking this opportunity to maybe claw back a little bit of the deficit. But check this out: 18,000 of y'all have joined us on Zwift for Wedu Wednesday from 70 different countries. We've all ridden over 150,000 miles. By the way, almost 80% of you who start a Wedu Wednesday finish it. This isn't unless you're George, it's not some hammer fest. Zwift absolutely makes indoor riding and training fun. By the way, they got the new Hub Direct Drive Trainer is back in stock and selling like crazy. Head on over to Zwift.com for a free trial and try out more. Again, that's Zwift, ZWIFT.com for a free trial. Today's show also brought to you by Athletic Greens. Look at this here, right? Got my AG1 travel pack. I do not leave home without it. This is something I use religiously, as does, I think, probably everybody on the show. If you want better gut health, more energy, you're not a big fan of taking pills and vitamins like yours truly, and you want just a daily supplement, this is the stuff. 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, all for less than $3 a day. It's a game changer. Everybody says it. Everybody talks about it. All the smart kids. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with this convenient daily nutrition. Let's make it easy. Head on over to athleticgreens.com/themove. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/themove. You get a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs.
All right, guys, let's jump right into the Tour Down Under. Let's start with talking about the TT. The time trial was a bit different than most. We'll start with you, Johan. How and why it was different than what you see. They weren't on time trial bikes. Let's go there.
Yeah, well, it's first of all, they called it a prologue, which are more and more rare these days. It's 5.5 kilometers. And I mean, there was, different aspects to it. First of all, the teams, the organizer and the UCI had agreed that logistically, I mean, this is not an easy race to go to. To get your bikes over there, you don't have your truck, you don't have your bus, you don't have your cars, everything is different. So to limit the transport of the special equipment, which is our time trial bikes and time trial equipment, for only 5.5 kilometers, they agreed that they would not use time trial bikes, that everybody would race on their road bikes. Time trial wheels were allowed. but what we've seen is that some of the riders have, really taken things to an extreme where, I've seen pictures of, for example, the setup of Pello Bilbao was, I think, the most extreme. I think we've all seen that picture where the brake levers were really put in a position to almost get into a time trial bike position. And yeah, I think it's only logical. I actually then checked out his bike, Pello Bilbao, who won a road stage, and there he's on normal handlebar, and his brake levers are real straight, so the classic setup. So we saw riders who were really trying to get as close as possible to this the T position, and yeah, I'm not surprised. It's once you're racing at the World Tour level, it's every little detail counts, and some guys really did their homework and were. When you saw them riding, it was as if they were on a time trial bike.
I thought it was pretty clever. He canted his brake lever shifters in to the point where I don't quite understand how it was legal, because you're not supposed to have your forearms on the handlebars, and he kind of was laying his forearms down there, but he could put his arms out in what was essentially an aero position on his road bike. And hats off to him. I thought it was a great decision.
Yeah, I think he didn't get a penalty or anything, so I think the UCI couldn't do anything. He was within the rules. And I think that's what they're going to be looking for. If every single detail counts, even in the road races, you're going to see these more and more. These kind of they're changing the rules constantly, right? They're adapting the rules because people are trying to go to the limits of that position, and I think there are certain limits now, regulations of how much you can tilt the brake levers, but I'm not sure if that's only for road races, and maybe in a time trial, then those regulations don't apply, even if you're on a normal bike.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the trick there, because it was very, very extreme, and if you would race like that in a road race, I think it would actually be dangerous.
Yeah, don't try it at home. Don't go look at Bilbao's position and then do that in your garage.
You guys, okay, let's elaborate on the win from that prologue and your thoughts. Go ahead. I'll start with you this time, Spencer.
Well, I saw something I've never seen before at the Tour Down Under, rain. So they start this race. We didn't do outcomes. I'm glad we didn't do it for this race, because there was a lot of oddball results. But, if you were a bettor, you should have been checking the weather for Adelaide, because Bettiol goes early. It's dry. It's like raining just as he finishes. And then as soon as it got wet, if it's kind of like Texas and Oklahoma's like this, it doesn't rain for a long time. Then the moment it rains, it's unbelievably slick. It looked like guys were on an ice rink. So no one could really touch his time. He finished 8 seconds ahead of Magnus Sheffield, who got second, which is a massive, massive time gap for a 6-minute time trial. It really wasn't a competition after that. So a little bit of, I don't know if they did that on purpose. If so, hats off to them. That was a really good move to have them go early before the rain.
Yeah. I don't know if it was. Nowadays you can predict, or you can check on all these apps and extra software all the teams have nowadays to check the weather, check the wind. So it was probably on purpose. But yeah, winning the first real race in the World Tour is obviously something of significance, and as you said, hats off to them to have done that way.
And how quickly things change from one day to the next for a rider like Bettiol. Let's elaborate on that incident if people didn't catch it the following day.
JB, I think it was, wasn't it? I think it was it was 2 days later. I think
2 days. Okay. Yeah.
The first day was the first real stage was a bunch sprint, which your typical Tour Down Under stage, not very difficult, short stages, fast. And I think the win of Phil Bauhaus from Bahrain was it Bahrain? Yeah, it's Bahrain, right?
Yep.
Yeah, really, really tall, super tall guy. and he beat Caleb Ewan and Michael Mathieu. So that one and was a really nice sprint he did. Really got really good lead out. So, but Bettiol kept the leader's jersey after stage one.
One note I have on that first stage is you and Caleb Ewan, I don't know if it's getting worse or maybe racing's changing. He has this terrible habit of sitting way too far back, like in the last 3-4 kilometers of the sprint. I thought he missed his Lotto team there. I mean, with those guys were trying hard, but he had no teammates up at the front of that race.
Yeah, I would say the excuse there is that he's racing without his team, and even if he just had one guy who could keep him in position with F, because he came with a lot of speed and he came really close.
He was flying in that sprint.
Right after the finish, he was already in first position. After the finish line, he was in first position. So I agree with you, Spencer. He definitely missed his train there, or at least one guy who could keep him up front.
Where is he contract wise? Like, you got to be sitting there as Caleb Ewan, as we've talked about for the last couple of years, the talent is excelling at age 20, 21, 22. Mm-hmm. Caleb's, been in his prime for a while, and you got to be sitting there going, I'm on a relegated team. I don't have as much time left. Where's he contract wise?
I don't know, but I think he may be in his last year of his contract. Being on a relegated team for him, it doesn't change anything, right? Because especially this year, because they're allowed to race all the races and they can pick, so they're even in a better situation. They have already decided that they don't do the Giro. Lotto, so they didn't do Tour Down Under, they don't do the Giro. It's they're actually in a better position as most of the World Tour teams, because I still think that for any team that the World Tour calendar is too heavy. There are too many races, and sometimes it's really puzzling, and really having to look for riders here and there to be able to send 7 healthy riders. Or race-ready riders to a race. So in that aspect, I think he's unaffected. But on the other hand, listen, he's a pure sprinter, and in his team, there is competition coming. So I think he will be super motivated this year to really reestablish him. Whether he will be able to do that or not, we don't know. But what is clear to me is that his form for the beginning of the season is really good, because there was one or two stages, one stage particularly that was hard at the end, and he was still up there. He was still in the group, which were maybe 30, 40 riders. So he must be in really good shape at the beginning of this season.
And I see that I think he has a contract through 2024, but
oh wow,
it's not all negative. The fact is, as Johan says, and just look how hard it was for Mark Cavendish to find a team willing to take him, a World Tour team. I mean, Ewan's not in a terrible position to be on a team that is sprint focused, because they don't have a GC rider. They go into those Grand Tours with them, and Caleb Ewan's the number one priority. Like that's not a terrible place to be in. They actually stole what's his name? Arnaud Demar's lead out man, who was really, really good last year from FDJ over the offseason. So
which one was that?
I'm going to forget his name.
Oh, it's an Italian guy, right?
Yes. Yeah. He's very good. I mean, he was key to a lot of Demar's wins at the Giro. So, I mean, I bet he feels pretty good about the position he's in, except the fact that
great job of his agent. And terrible job of the manager of Lotto, the former manager of Lotto, to give him such a long contract, because I've often said, Lotto is a really nice team, but it's so frustrating sometimes to build your main objectives around one sprinter, because these guys, a guy like Caleb Ewan, he's a pure sprinter. There's you could argue, okay, like he can be in short uphill finishes, he can be up there, but it's often that I've seen the Lotto team sacrificing the whole team to be with Caleb Ewan to keep him in front, and then not get the win, and then a lot of times Caleb Ewan is either really good or really, really bad, And, a lot of times the team had to be sacrificed to keep Caleb Ewan in the race, to make the time cut. So that goes at the expense of certain riders who could eventually go for their own chances whenever the leader, in this case, Caleb Ewan, can't win the stage. And I personally think that the team is too centered or has been too centered around Caleb Ewan in the past. And I think they have a new manager now, Stéphane Hulot. The old manager, John Lalonde, left after 3 years. And I think there's a new wind within Lotto. And I think that team is going to improve drastically in the next 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. Agree on all counts. I don't want to slam the former director of that team, but it was not constructed well.
I'm going to do it for you.
Yeah, I have some strong thoughts about that.
Spencer, I'm used to be the bad guy. I really don't care. So I'm going to slam him for you. So he did a terrible job, John Lalonde, I think, in that team, especially with with certain contracts and long-term contracts. So for example, they had I don't know, Philippe Gilbert. With all respect for Philippe Gilbert, but giving a 36-year-old rider a 3-year contract is a huge mistake, in my opinion. And then they had John Degenkolb, who had a super expensive contract, who did nothing during 2 years for Lotto. So I think that's going to change.
Yeah, you don't want to pay people for. I mean, Lefebvre, I don't see eye to eye with him on everything, but he's like, his philosophy is don't pay people for past results and don't pay them to fall apart on your dime, basically.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about Rohan Dennis, who looked good, looked fit, obviously getting a lot of TV time, being a local. And I watched, I kind of piped into some local coverage instead of my usual channels. And yeah, they were long interviews before and after every race with him, but he was looking good, right?
So this is stage 2.
Yes,
there's kind of an inverted Tour Down Under. Like the normal, I don't even know if he said who's won the race. We're keeping it as a surprise for the end. But like a normal Tour Down Under, you'd have sprint stage, and then maybe second to last day they do Wollonga Hills mountaintop finish, like the biggest mountain in South Australia, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah.
They didn't do that this year. So already on stage 2, I'd say stage 2 and 3 were the most important stages GC wise, and they didn't do a summit finish, which I think really kind of lit the race up. This second stage is really hard, splits in the crosswinds. It was an elite group, got away at the end, and then Dennis won with a really, really smart move at the end out of it.
Yeah, really smart move and a lot of power. A lot of power. I mean, the way he went up to, was it Jay Hindley? It was Jay Hindley. I mean, don't forget, Giro winner, top rider and going for it. And I mean, listen, Rohan Dennis, man, he is something else. This guy, he has so much power. And when he has his day, I think he's basically unbeatable. He has shown it, 2 years in a row, world champion time trial. I think, Theo Gegenhardt will not contradict me if I say that he owes his Giro victory to Rohan Dennis. Right?
I agree. I think he set the record up to Stelvio in that Giro.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
I've often said, this is one guy. He told me personally that, he's not interested. I asked him once, it doesn't interest him, but this is a guy who can win a Grand Tour. There's no doubt about it. He can time trial as the best. And on the day, listen, if you set this record on the Stelvio, you have to be able to climb. That's like, the Stelvio, there's a lot of big bike riders who went up there in race conditions. And, it's just, he has the power, whether it's just, he's not, he thinks it's a really big sacrifice and a long-term plan to transform into a Grand Tour rider. But I have no doubt, like physically, he is absolutely able to do it. He would be a top 3 candidate in any Grand Tour, in my opinion.
I'm trying to remember all these years of covering everything sort of blurs together, but I think it was Rohan Dennis we were talking about several years ago. Is he the one that's really kind of quirky and almost in like a high maintenance kind of way about his TT bike?
Well, I mean,
I'm trying to think of, am I thinking of the right guy?
Yeah,
Yes,
I think
you
you
are.
are.
Like,
guy.
he was being really difficult. So I, in my mind, had this image of him that I just don't like people like that are prima donnas.
JB, listen, let me tell you, every big champion is a prima donna. Let me tell you.
Well, and back to what I said earlier, he had so much TV time. I was like, I really like this guy.
But he was on Bahrain. He was on Bahrain, Merida, and Merida didn't really make the best time trial bikes back then. So he was unhappy with it. And it came to a point where in the Tour de France, he was world champion. He was the reigning world champion time trial. And, the day before the big time trial in the Tour, and he was he was going to win for sure. And he decided to quit the race. He stopped in the feed zone and just disappeared from the race, and then didn't race anymore for the team. He got in bad situation with them. Didn't race at all. So I think he quit like after 2 weeks in the Tour. I don't think he got fired, but they didn't give him any more races. There was really bad vibes.
Yeah, okay.
Completely, did everything on his own, didn't do one single race, showed up at the World Championships and killed everybody. Like he just won. He was on a neutral bike, like a non-branded bike, and just rode, like destroyed everybody in the time trial. A second was Remco Evenepoel. So
wow.
Yeah.
If they do crits that are ceremonial and great for the fans, I think they should have a bike throwing competition. Because he's a bike thrower when he's upset, right?
Well, I never seen him throw his bike, but
I'd like to see that.
It's very hard to compete with the bike throw of Sir Bradley Wiggins.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was the Tour de Trentino or something, or one of the Tour of the Alps in preparation for the Giro. And he, you can look up the images. He got a mechanical and threw his bike away, and by coincidence, his bike just rode on the two wheels. Mm-hmm. And hit the wall, and it was just parked perfectly against the wall.
Oh, I kind of remember that.
It's a beautiful, beautiful bike throw. Unbelievable.
Okay, now this is
nice advertising for Pinarello.
What did we call that when we were kids? Ghost riding your bike?
Yeah.
Where you jump off and just watch it. All right. So this was the stage where we saw the incident with Mathieu. In the water bottle. Let's elaborate on that. Why don't you break down what happened?
Well, it's first of all, it's short stages, like 120, 130 kilometers. I think maximum they did 3 hours of racing. If I'm correct, Spencer, I don't know.
So this was you're generally correct. I think it was like an average stage length of 3.1 hours. This was the Queen stage, the hardest stage. It was 4 hours long. And Bettiol did fall apart about 3 hours into it. So that probably played into it.
Yeah. But, we see it less and less. We see less with the way cycling has evolved, with the way science has been embraced by all the teams. We've said it the other day, we don't see any more riders running out of energy, bonking. You hardly see it. Cramping is the same way. It's hydration. But I think personally, it's the combination of being the first race, being in a position to defend. So probably a little bit more stressed, and the extreme heat in Australia. And after 3 hours, he was cramping, and he was. If for the listeners or the viewers who want to look up the footage, it was quite spectacular. The cramps were there. He could not pedal anymore. He got to stop pedaling, had to get off his bike, was actually hitting his quads, which I didn't understand. I don't understand what that's going to do to make your cramps go away. And then finally he was super, super frustrated with the cameraman because they were filming. And so he was shouting at them and pointing at them, and then finally throwing a water bottle at them. Haven't seen any reaction from the commissaires on that. I haven't seen a penalty, and I also haven't seen any explanation or statement from his team manager, our dear Jonathan Waters, who's usually quite vocal on a lot of stuff, but he remained silent. I'm again taking the position of the bad guy.
JV would have some thoughts on that, I think, if it was a non-EF rider. We'd probably hear about it.
Let's elaborate a little bit more on what that's like for a lot of those riders going from winter in Europe to what kind of temperatures were they getting in Australia? I mean, they're up around 100 degrees.
High 30s, close to 40 degrees. That's typical. So that's Celsius. So that's
so 40 is 104. For some of our audience.
I think it was a little cooler. It was like down to 90 degrees for the latter half of the race, like when the stage occurred.
Yeah,
but that's still. I mean, it's like, for reference, these guys are probably training in like 50 to 60 degrees in Spain. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough jump to go from that to 90.
And although they are all there since a week or 10 days before, but still, it's the racing in those hot temperatures. You lose a lot of fluids, and you can. I think it's kind of logical that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in those kind of races, because afterwards, once they get to the European territory, they manage the temperatures and then they can adapt to it quite easily. This is quite a shock to the body.
I bet. Every year I get the great fortune of spending a month in Aspen, Colorado at 8,000 feet. And I come back to Austin, Texas, and it's just overwhelming for a while. I don't even want to ride the bike.
It's like an oven, right?
It's like an oven. And on the heels of that, I have a question for you guys. If, with a lot of you talk about new nutrition and all the things that have changed. And I've recently just fallen in love with an infrared sauna. And that would be a great way to acclimate to some heat in preparation. And there's a lot of health benefits to it, but I don't know. Have you heard of any of that being part of a training schedule for riders? We've talked about ice baths. Probably. And they're using that kind of thing.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I know, for example, that when certain riders went to the Olympics, and it was going to be very hot and humid, that some riders had opted to stay longer in Europe and did certain trainings in heat chambers to adapt, because they wanted to take advantage. I mean, they were adapting to the heat and to the time difference at home, and then traveled at the last moment. But I don't see it happening for a tour down under.
It's probably not important enough.
Yeah.
I do remember the woman who won that Olympic road race, huge upset, was an academic, and she published some papers she had a really specific sauna training preparation for that Olympics that clearly paid off.
Yeah, she was not even a professional.
No.
She's a teacher, Anna Kiesenhofer.
Yeah, just like a scientist who then went and won the Olympics. It's pretty wild.
She got a pro contract after that Olympic title. So, but from what I hear, she prefers to be like a semi-pro and keep teaching. So I don't know if she's going to stay on board of her pro team. But you're right. She had this all calculated and figured out, and then went in an early break, and that was quite the ride of the Austrian rider.
All right, where did we leave off here? Now we're going to talk about stage 3.
Or should we? So Bettiol cramps. He's the race leader. He's out. I thought his chain broke. That's how bad the cramp was. He literally couldn't ride.
Until you saw him. I thought he was hammering on his seat post, and he was pounding on his thigh.
Yeah, and Spencer, you're right. I mean, his teammate thought the same, because his teammate wanted to give him the bike.
Yeah.
So that's also a bit strange, because normally, I mean, if you get to a point where you have to get off your bike, you can feel that coming already on the other little hills before.
Yeah.
Because I think that day it was like really a rolling it was hard. It was up and down, so it was kind of strange that he didn't inform his team that he was on the limit of cramping. But yeah, I mean, he lost all possibilities that day. Not that he was going to win the Tour Down Under, but it kind of, it sucks to be in that position when you're in the leader's jersey and you have to, give it away in those circumstances.
Yeah. And so as he's cramping, it was kind of a tough day. There was crosswinds, split, like a group chasing back on. They get to this climb before the finish, and like the elite group goes away. Basically, Jay Vine won the race here because it's Dennis, Jay Vine, Mauro Schmid, Simon Yates, and Jai Hindley get away on the final climb. There's a descent and then flat run into the finish. Dennis wins really smartly and powerfully. Jay Vine gets second, and that kind of cements his overall win. The fact that he gets real time, and then we should say Caleb Ewan gets 6th on the stage. Really hard stage. Alberto Bettiol cracks.
That's the stage where what I said. Caleb Ewan is in good shape because he made it with that select group and wins the sprint of the. I think it was probably like maximum 30 riders.
Yeah, 11 seconds behind Dennis. So he was right there. So Caleb Ewan's flying right now, but Jay Vine gets that second place time bonus plus real time on the other people. Right here, that Jay Vine is, and Jay Vine did a good job in the time trial and the prologue of limiting his losses, even in the rain. So this was huge for Vine.
But I was surprised the day after. The day after we have the two strongest riders, Simon Yates and Jay Vine, get away, and Pello Bilbao getting across and then finally winning in the sprint. I was
that bridge across was impressive.
Yeah,
it's really impressive.
Pello Bilbao is that kind of rider. He's fast in a small group. He's a great descender, and he said, he saw he couldn't go with them, so he paced, and then the last 300 meters did like an incredible sprint to make it, and it was make it or break it, And yeah, but I was surprised there, for example, although he did have a mechanical before that Rohan Dennis actually couldn't follow. I mean, I'm not going to say that group, but that he was not in the next group. So he did this amazing performance the day before, and then he kind of cracked the stage after that. I repeat, he did have a mechanical and had to ride for a long time to get back in position, but I was kind of surprised because the way I saw him winning that stage, I thought this is a serious candidate, because let's say the Tour Down Under is not that hard to get rid of a guy like Rohan Dennis. There's shorter climbs and Rohan Dennis is able to do that. So I was surprised to see him lose the jersey that day.
And this was the day Vine had to dump him here, because if he didn't get rid of him on stage 3, I don't think he could have done that on stage 4 and 5. So this was key for Jay Vine to get away.
Yeah.
I was surprised as well. I thought Dennis, maybe we're just seeing how good Simon Yates and Jay Vine are right now. And Dennis has not, while fit, has not finished polishing his full season form at the moment.
I'm sure that's the case. These two riders were in top shape. I mean, listen, Jay Vine won the Australian Championships time trial, which, it looks like going to UAE, whether it's the environment of the team. I mean, I think Alpecin is also a super professional team. So, but still, he goes, he went up a level, I think, in at least in his mentality. I think that Jay Vine, they have designated him as being the co-leader for the Giro together with João Almeida before the season. So obviously he's gotten a certain status, and in the Tour Down Under, in his home race, he immediately showed that he's ready for it.
Yeah, you kind of answered part of my next question there, Johan. I was like, what does the season look like for Jay Vine when you're on UAE, where the ultimate goal is the Tour and Pogacar? Some opportunities for him in the Giro, and what else?
Well, Jay Vine, listen, I think he won 2 stages in the Vuelta last year. That was kind of, we all knew that he had this amazing potential. He was world champion Zwift, and he got this contract through winning the Zwift Academy league, and but still, to translate that towards great results in road races, that's a different thing. And initially he was struggling a bit to find his place in the peloton, but obviously the Tour Down Under, he was the leader of the team. They knew already from the training camps that he was in great shape, and he had the team completely at his service. So he had to deliver, and that's also something I think completely new for him, to be the leader of the team and have the help of your teammates. So I'm quite impressed with the way he has I'm going to say transformed, but improved by changing teams.
Yeah, before the race, I would have said, don't pay attention to the Tour Down Under. It's a waste of time. Don't watch. Don't take anything from this. And then now that I've seen it, I'm thinking, is Jay Vine going to win the Giro? I mean, we saw him. He has added a piece that with the time trialing that he just didn't have last year. So if I was Joao Almeida, I'd be getting out the train pretty hard today. I'd be a little worried about my Giro leadership.
Let's talk a little bit about Simon Yates, who looked very good as well. He looked pretty good, and we always see him up there and having good days and bad days, and not really pulling off the overall, but in form, looking good now.
Yeah, well, I think he's on the only Australian team in the World Tour or in professional cycling, I would say. And obviously they are, I think, the one team that brought their A team, right? For them, it was super important. They brought Simon Yates, they brought Michael Matthews, and a great team to support them. So this was obviously a goal for them. And, he was there. He attacked on every time it was possible, he attacked. And there was only one guy who could always stay with him, was Jay Vine. But I think, and after the race, he admitted that he was as good as he can be, and that Jay Vine was just stronger. So, but yeah, I mean, Simon Yates is obviously off to a great start of the season with what he has shown in Tour Down Under.
I feel like emotionally this was big for Jayco. I mean, they had a bad season last year, really bad. And Yates, he's good. I feel like he struggled with a little bit of consistency. He's kind of been struggling with consistency for a while to put together racing. I mean, I do kind of worry, is he too fit too early? I mean, he looked incredible, but to get through this race and challenge Vine in a course that didn't suit him at all, I was impressed.
Yeah.
Well, you bring up a good point. I'd love for you guys to elaborate a little bit on that, being too fit too early. We've talked about how, some of these guys are racing cyclocross. They're doing things year round. There's not the downtime there used to be.
I'm not.
Yeah, you're shaking your head, so I'd love your thoughts.
I'm not particularly. I mean, in this cycling, I'm not particularly worried about those things anymore. But before I would have said, way too early. How can you be that good in January and then wanting to perform in May and maybe in the Tour? Listen, I've watched the World Cup cyclocross today in Spain, in Benidorm. It was freaking unbelievable. I mean, again, Van der Poel and Van Aert just killing it, like going, maximum. These guys have goals. I mean, they want to be there in the Spring Classics. They want to be there in the Tour. Being too good too early, JB, I think that's
changed.
It's all
Yeah. You used to want the downtime to recover and then build up, but all this nutrition and training and treatments, it's changed the game.
I personally still think it's safer to work progressively towards one goal, especially if you're working towards the Tour. I would personally, but you know what? I mean, listen, I'm out of it since a long time, so. But I think it's safer to build up progressively and have, maybe a little bit of a peak in the classics, and then your big peak in the summer. Let's say, we're also talking like to come back to, for example, Van der Poel and Van Aert. We also cannot say that that's not the standard. These guys are exceptional. They're like the best of their generation in the world in any discipline. So, yeah, but I mean, to be really, I mean, listen, Simon Yates had to be really good. For Jaco, this is incredible important. It's the same like seeing Tadej Pogačar killing everybody in the Tour of UAE. It's the same thing. I mean,
no spoilers. The race hasn't happened yet, but yeah, that's what's going to happen again this year.
I don't know. I mean, if I would be the management of Team UAE, I would definitely do it differently. I would put a guy like Jay Vine there to perform, and leave Tadej away. But obviously, the Sheikh will probably not understand that. It's his star rider. They pay him, a lot of money, and so he wants his star rider to win his home race. There's no negotiating around that, I think.
By the way, that finish your thought, because I was going to go back to Van der Poel and Van Aert. Go ahead, Spencer.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm of two minds about it. Where with like Johan, I get a little nervous. Like, wow, they're really fit really early. I wonder if maybe the key ingredient is just not being super, super, super light too long. If you could, like, Van Aert is clearly a little heavier than normal. Still really fast, but probably he has a plan to dial some kilograms off for the classics and the Tour. But if he can just keep a little bit of weight on and he's not starving himself 12 months out of the year.
Sorry to interrupt you, Spencer, but I've seen images of him in the tent today after the race where they change. I've seen him take his shirt off. I don't know where he can lose weight. I mean, it's kind of they can lose a little bit of weight, but man, these guys are fit all the time.
I could see why they need to be a little bigger to have more power. If you watch today was dry, which was cool in cyclocross. You don't see that very often, but the power they have to put out to go through the mud and all of that, and on and off the bike and running uphill, you would need to be bigger at that time in the season, I would think.
Yeah,
I would worry about Dumoulinism. Like, I feel like he was just too thin all the time, and that's part of the reason he burned out and hated the thought of riding a bike. That would be my concern.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, those guys, as you say, that maybe rules don't apply to.
They are exceptional.
Don't try to emulate.
No, they are exceptional. It's like it's not the standard. You cannot take that as the benchmark. I mean, obviously, every rider wants to be as good as them, but I think they are extremely gifted. And on top of that, they're really, they're animals when they train. To be able to deal with that heavy workload, you have to be super strong and super talented, and that's what makes the difference.
And we'll come back to the Tour Down Under in a second, because it's just so fun to talk about Van Aert and Van der Poel. Watching the power that Van der Poel had, and both of them obviously, and then all of the back issues he's been having. Have you gotten any intel on his condition with that? I just can't imagine if you had an injured back that you could ride like he did.
Probably his back didn't hurt today.
Yeah, it looked pretty good.
It was amazing.
Yeah. That was one of the best cross races I've seen in a while.
Yeah, but it's also, listen, it was in Spain. It was in Benidorm actually, which is coincidentally, it's where all the teams are based right now. It's literally, for Van Aert, it was probably 10 kilometers away from where his team is based in their training camps. And it was, it's super fast. I think he averaged close to 25 kilometers per hour. The winner, on a course like that, with so many turns and, but it's a completely different than a cross in the mud, where you really have to work. This was ideal for Van der Poel, because Van der Poel is a genius on a bicycle. He's super skilled. He's an artist. He's this is another one. He's an athlete and he's an artist.
Go watch that race too. Anyone listening, wherever you can pick it up on a stream, it's worth watching those two go head to head anytime. Yeah. All right. We're running a little long here. That's my fault. That's on me. Let's go to stage 4, which is a cool story. The Cofidis win with Brian Kokar.
Yeah.
it's rare that you see a bunch sprint and then someone just scoots away like that.
Yeah, he escaped. He escaped from the bunch.
Well, it's a little bit of background on the stage. I mean, I turned this on. I thought I was watching Paris-Nice because with 77K to go, it's breaking up. There's echelons all day. And then the front group, I'm not quite sure why this happened. They just held the chase group off. I mean, it looked miserable. They're just like dangling behind all day. I kind of wonder, like, were they just trying to get fit? Where like was AG2R and Jayco thinking we need to get a nice training day in? Let's hold these guys off and make their lives miserable. So it was such a hard day from start to finish, which I feel like is unusual at the Tour Down Under. That Coquard, when he went, everyone was probably dead. So it looked like he just flew away, but he's the only one who had anything left in the tank.
Yeah, well, I think I just saw the final of the race, but I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was slightly uphill.
It was definitely slightly uphill,
and that's his strong. I mean, we've seen that in the Tour of Spain, for example, that he was the only one who could be close to Mats Pedersen sometimes in those sprints. And this was an ideal sprint for him. This would have been an ideal sprint for Caleb Ewan too. Was Caleb Ewan up there?
No, I believe that's probably part of the reason. No, Caleb Ewan was up there. You're right. Caden Groves was off the back.
But I think that Caleb Ewan probably was had to pay for the lack of support again. I mean, if it was crosswind, so it was obviously had to be a big fight, and I could hardly imagine that he had the same protection around him than if he would have been with his straight team. But listen, I mean that win of Brian Coquard was impressive, and what's more impressive is that this is a guy until that I think this was his 50th win as a pro, so he had won 49 races before this. It's his 10th year as a pro, and it's the first time he wins a World Tour race. I mean, that's unbelievable, because this is a fast guy, and he can sometimes make it when in stages, let's say, whatever, a Tour of Switzerland or a Tour of Poland, where there's, or Tour of Catalonia, let's say, where there's 30, 40 riders left, and he could be there, and he had never managed to win a World Tour race. So that's, hats off to his persistence, to keep trying, and finally, after 49 wins his first World Tour victory. That's impressive.
It was really impressive. He has a lot of podiums. Like if you remember this from, I'm just looking at his top 3 finishes in World Tour races. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Tour de France stage podiums. Some of those second places, I think it was Marcel Kittel and him were in a bike throw so close. I'm still not sure if they got the winner right, but he almost got a World Tour win there. And then we saw Vuelta a España last year. I thought he was going to win the stage, and Mads Pedersen beat him. I think we're seeing him. He's 30 years old, almost getting better. I mean, this is, if you combine the end of the season last year and then what we've seen from him so far this year, it's like Coquard on another level.
No, I think obviously, let's not forget this Tour Down Under. It's the first race of the season. It's, most of the teams don't bring their A game. But still, I mean, the way he won that, even with the big sprinters, he would still have won, because it was not even close.
Yeah,
I went back and rewatched his sprint in slow-mo a few times, and I remember the first time we were really breaking down Caleb Ewan, who almost could kiss the handlebars. Same thing with Coquard, like that position is just. Like I want to go try that on my bike. I think I'll fall over.
It takes a lot of training.
Yeah.
I think a guy like Caleb Ewan, for example, he went away from that position a bit. I think the only one who really does it naturally is Mark Cavendish. Cavendish is like, his head in front of his handlebars, and that's like a natural aerodynamic position in the sprint. I remember Caleb Ewan 1 year or 2 years trained specifically on that, and was really extreme with being so much bent, like forward. but it must be really difficult. I mean, it's, of course it's more aerodynamic, but to be able to generate a really good power combined with the aerodynamics to be up there, that must take a lot of training.
Well, and at a certain point, the rear wheel comes off the ground too when you're putting that much weight forward.
Ewan looks like, he's going to flip over sometimes. It is funny. Cavendish kind of has a natural. Just seems like that's the way he sprints, and he can put out a little watts.
Since the beginning, like in his really young years when he was with THEMOVE, was already sprinting that way.
And then I think Ewan, like a generation below him, watched him do that and then has trained to mimic that almost to more extreme measures.
I think so too. Yeah. Anyway,
another thing,
it worked for Brian Kokar.
Yeah, another thing I wanted to mention about Tour Down Under is, if you didn't listen to our Up and Comers show, one of the riders we talked about was American Magnus Sheffield. And he was within striking distance of that podium in the Tour Down Under, placing fourth. What was he, 40, 50-ish seconds back, but in the hunt.
Yeah.
The difference was, it's a funny thing about stage 4. I've never seen this before at the Tour Down Under. Top 4 places are non-Southern Hemisphere riders. This is really a race traditionally for Australians, Kiwis, and South Africans. And we saw 3 French riders and an Italian in the top 4, which is unusual. Never seen that. But Sheffield just missed out on those stage 2 and 3 moves where the best climbers got away.
Well, he also, let's say, he was in amazing shape because he was the only guy who got close to Mathieu in the prologue and rode in wet conditions. And then on stage 1, he had a big crash, was all, banded.
Yes. Yeah,
he was all banged up, and he had band-aids on his knees and stuff like that. So, but I think we're going to see a lot of that guy this year.
I got to point out something, because we've been in awe of Johan's knowledge on the move and JB squared and all this stuff we do for years now. Spencer tracking hemisphere trends.
I only know it because I used to get, Jay McCartney's going to be a star, and then he never wins anything again.
That is what you get with this show. Oh my God, the combination of you two. I love it. All right, any final thoughts on this year's Tour Down Under? And I do want to mention something about up and comers from another race too. Well, I want to,
we have to finish with the day stage, where we saw the best guys again go away.
Technically, yesterday we had this debate earlier.
Yeah,
no one knows.
It was on Sunday in Australia, right?
Right. Yes.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, Simon Yates trying, Jay Vine, I would say quite comfortably following, and then the other Australian star, Ben O'Connor, was up there, and then amongst the 3 guys sprinting it out, Simon Yates finally getting his deserved stage victory, and Jay Vine winning the overall. I think there's no discussion that Jay Vine was the strongest rider. Had a great team around him, and well deserved win for him. And then I think the question is, I don't know what you think, Spencer. This is the first World Tour race, but what does that really mean in the whole picture of the season? We've said it before that most of the teams don't bring their best team. It is a long way to travel. It's hard on the riders, on the staff. Not just going there, but then coming back, having to adapt again to different time zone, especially very important, different weather again, cold weather. What does it really mean? It's a difficult race to win. It's definitely an Australians race. We see Jay Vine, we see Rohan Dennis, Simon Yates, Caleb Ewan, all these guys. But what does it mean in terms of the sports value? What do you think?
Traditionally, I'd say almost nothing. I hate to be
I agree.
harsh. This year is a little bit different. I think Jay Vine was the first rider to ever win the Tour Down Under without winning a stage. Because normally it's a time bonus competition. It's almost like an Australian points race. You're down there picking up time bonuses on the sprint finishes. This was a little bit more of a dynamic race. it's a little different because Vine, I just saw a dynamic from him with the time trialing and maybe some race smarts that I hadn't seen before. So that's interesting, but I wouldn't read too much into this, except that Ben O'Connor seems to still be good. Simon Yates looks like he's primed for a good season. I did think you can, like Jai Hindley looked really good, not the fittest, but he's targeting the Tour this year. So that's good. It's like Jai Hindley's on pace probably for a decent summer, just stuff like that. And same thing with Magnus Sheffield. Looks good. Looks like he's going to improve this year. Like, I think that's the main thing you pull out of it. Mark Hershey looked, he's had these terrible health problems at the beginning of every season since he left DSM or Sunweb, whatever you want to call it. This is like his first good January, and it looked really strong. So maybe he'll figure in some classics or some monuments.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's little things you can see. It's an extremely difficult race to win, but basically when you get back to Europe, you start from zero again.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway. But it's obviously, if you can win a stage as a team, or if you can win the overall, it takes pressure off, because it's always in the beginning, in the first 2 months, it's pursuing that first win that sometimes brings panic into the team. And it's always nice to win early, and
I imagine that can set a tone for the season, like within the team. Exactly. Right?
Yeah, like, Jay Vine, his confidence is going to be through the roof. And also the confidence of the team in Jay Vine will be really, really good. So I think that's a really good start for him.
Yeah. And, it probably helps him in Australia. This is like not really relevant to bike racing, but raises his profile with the Australian cycling scene and kind of gets him on the board with the big stars down there, like Michael Matthews. I assume Ben O'Connor is somewhat notable since he had a great tour 2 years ago. So I bet it means a lot to Jay Vine, and he feels confidence in himself and the team's confident in him. So that's good. But you certainly don't want to just grab the results from the Tour Down Under and then assume that that's what's going to happen later in the year.
And Jay Vine has a great assistant. I mean, it's the first time that I see an interview of a winner. Did you see his post?
I did see that. Yeah, I was a little confused about what was going on there.
With his wife standing next to him and really, like, he was talking, and she was like, and he was, acknowledging her, and because she's been basically like a full-time team assistant during, she was this 1 year his 1 year in the Australian Championships, and then now during Tour Down Under, I think she was kind of part of the team. So that was a first for me.
That makes a lot more sense. I didn't realize she has a swan year and all of that, because I'm like, why are we interviewing the girlfriend or whatever? That makes so much more sense. Okay.
She's there like man on the ground.
Supporting him fully. And it was nice to see. It's a tandem. It's a team.
I think she was talking about at the end of last year how they were so broke because he wasn't making very much money. And then he won those stages at the Vuelta, and they were like just happy to have the stage win bonuses. So he's come a long way since then.
This is a guy who really went for it. He obtained that contract through the Zwift Academy competition. And he was already racing. I mean, it's not like he went from being exclusively an indoor rider. He was racing in Australia, right? It's not like, but he was super strong in those events. Got that contract. That was the reward. But needless to say that this was a small contract, probably a minimum contract. Now these people made a bet to leave everything behind in Australia, move over to Europe on a low salary. And it's it went really in acceleration from there on, and won those stages in the Vuelta, got the bonuses, and then finally basically got out of his contract because he technically had a contract with Alpecin this year also, and so I think that the offer of UAE was so good that they came to an agreement to buy out the existing contract and go for a really good contract to UAE. So good on him and his wife.
Yeah. Boy, I'm just thinking about it. Being married to a professional cyclist and being broke is not a good recipe for a good marriage. There's 100% chance of that marriage failing. So good for him. One thing I do want to mention, because you need to go listen to our Up and Comer show where Johan broke down all the new names to look for this coming season, who to watch. And of course, 2 days later, it comes to fruition. Arnaud Dulé. Arnaud Dulé. I believe you said, I'm paraphrasing, you said on that Up and Comer show, if you pay attention to one rider this season,
one name of the list to remember is
one name. 2 days later, the guy wins his first pro race, or not pro race.
He won the first race on European soil.
There you go. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I think he's 20, right? He's in his second year as a professional and he's 20 years old. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
That is, and he was winning hard races last year at 19. I mean,
he won 9 races last year, but especially, I mean, more than the quantity of the races, it's the power. I mean, I've seen his power data. It's incredible. It's like, he did some things that said, okay, this is a guy who's going to rival at some point with a guy like Van Aert. In a 2-man up sprint, it's going to be tight.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was the race? I don't know how you watch so much racing.
Actually, I mean, coincidentally, it was a race in Spain, in the Valencia region, and it was basically, I would say, the finish was 5 kilometers away from the cyclocross.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those beginning of the season races where it's not the highest ranked race, but he beats Edvald Boasson-Hagen, who is an established rider, and as usual, when this guy gets a freeway and it's a hard sprint, there's nobody was even on his back wheel. There was several lengths between him and the second guy.
And some nasty crashes in that final sprint too. Man!
In the beginning of the season, everybody's nervous. They have to get used again to the certain things in the peloton, and unfortunately, it happens.
Yeah. Johan, how do you, as a team manager, how do you convince the rider that they don't want to do the Classica Valenciana, which is right down their street probably? I know you're going to go to Australia, and do they fly like economy? Is that what most riders are doing?
To Australia?
Yeah, to the Tour Down Under. No.
They all fly business class. Yeah.
And do they have to bring their bikes, or does the team take care of that for them?
The team takes care of everything.
Okay, so that's an easier sell.
The cyclist, you just go with the suitcase. The deal with the organization is that everybody, the organization pays for business class for all the riders. Unfortunately, I don't think they do it for the staff. That's these guys have a hard time too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to go to go race your bike. But
are there ever like disagreements at training camp? Like, okay, you guys are going to the Tour Down Under. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I'd rather just stay in Spain.
Of course. That's why we don't. I mean, listen. I mean, there's. For example, we've seen, we haven't seen them in the results, but there was 2 ex-Tour de France winners who were there. Geraint Thomas and Chris Froome.
Yeah,
they went there because they want to get started early. They're getting in the end of their career, and they have seen that they need to be ready from the beginning of the season. So that was obviously at their request to go there. They didn't go there because they were told to go there. They requested to go.
I got to commend Froome, because when he pops, the cameras show it every time, and he gives a friendly wave to the camera, like he's just accepting where he is at the moment.
I don't think so, JB. He's not accepting. I mean, at least not from his.
Well, maybe accepting's not the right. He's showing up.
Yeah. I mean, he obviously, it's a guy. He loves to ride his bike. I mean, he could easily say, okay, listen, guys, I'm done with this. He won 4 times the Tour, 2 times the Vuelta. He won the Giro.
Plenty of money in the bank.
Why? So obviously he's doing it for the love and the passion of riding his bike. At the same time, I still find it sad to watch. And I personally, I mean, I'm going to go on record. He may be, I hope he proves me wrong, but he will not come back to the level to be in a position to be on the podium of a Grand Tour. There's no way. There's no way. That accident was the breaking point, and there's a before and after. And in the meantime, the top riders have evolved, and he had to catch up with rehabilitation and getting healthy again. So I applaud him for keep racing, but I'm afraid that we're not going to see Chris Froome anymore at the front of the peloton in terms of results.
I agree. I mean, look at Geraint Thomas. He didn't have the crash. He's just getting older, and he had, I thought, an amazing tour last year. Probably one of his best physical performances.
Absolutely,
he's nowhere near Vingegaard and Pogačar.
Yeah,
that's a good point. He was probably on his best form ever, but that's not enough anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the level is so high.
Yeah, it's the same. Like even with Chris Froome, when Chris Froome says, and he's probably right. I'm very close to the numbers I had when I was winning the Tour. It's probably right.
Wow.
But every year there's a 1.5 to 2% increase of the general level of performance of the peloton. And if you're 4 years out of it, you're 10% behind. That's massive.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you very much. And you probably got an indication here. This is a setup you might see and hear more of with myself, but more importantly, Spencer Martin, Johan Bruneel, adding more shows. And I think maybe UAE Tour is maybe next for us. I don't have the schedule.
We'll definitely be back for UAE Tour. How could you miss the UAE Tour? That's
but we adding more shows to the Move lineup and to Wedu. So we hope you guys are enjoying this. Thank you, both you guys, for doing this.
Thanks for having me.